Hey all, Scott here. I hate rumors. Ever since the dawn of time, they've been used to spoil major reveals, and ever since they've been primarily used to get the attention of Nintendo fans, such as this one, Nintendo's lineup for 2021. This one's fake. This is an eye exam.
Oh man, the build-up to a system's reveal and release is unlike anything else. Just that feeling of excitement. It's familiar to your old console, but bigger and better and all new. But because of that, rumors start floating around. You start to ask some questions.
Can it tuck me in?
Pretty much with any upcoming video game console, you get fishy statements from the dark alleyways of the internet. Articles reading, yeah sure, it'll make you lunch. Some info may leak out ahead of time and turn out to be true. And then there's this. Rumors and leaks are either what keeps the excitement rolling or what kills it immediately. Every system has them, and I think it's as good a time as any to pick a console and go through the gossip throughout its life. So let's see what system we'll be scouring. Damn it, the Nintendo 3DS, a monumental leap forward for all things called 3DS. It was a Nintendo handheld, of course it did well, but its main gimmick was the glasses-free 3D screen. Now, back when this portable was announced, 3D was the thing, as in everybody went to go see the movie Avatar in 3D and then gave up. I'd consider it to be a fad. I mean, that was one of the biggest movies of all time, so all these companies worked on a bunch of 3D-centric products like 3D TVs and 3D Blu-rays, but you still had to wear icebreakers to enjoy them. 3D glasses were almost always required to enjoy 3D content, which could sometimes ruin the magic. You take those glasses off and the screen's just a blurry mess. It kind of reinforced the idea that the 3D visuals you were experiencing were just mere illusions. So the idea of glasses-free 3D was incredibly intriguing. Not needing glasses made way for experiences to be so much more engaging and immersive, so it's no surprise that once the technology for glasses-free 3D became more easily implementable into consumer products, it was. Yeah, a cell phone with glasses-free 3D, it's like the clock's really there. But Nintendo was one of the first big companies to embrace the tech in their juicy new handheld system, which brings us back to 2009. In 2009, the Nintendo DS was hitting its stride with multiple revisions and an enormous library of titles. However, it was 5-year-old hardware at this point. People were starting to ask when the next generation of Nintendo handhelds was hitting the scene, a Nintendo DS2, if you will. Then Nintendo president Satoru Iwata made a brief statement on the matter to the Japanese publication Asahi Shimbun, revealing, "The Nintendo DS Successor will have highly detailed graphics and it will be necessary to have a sensor with the ability to read the movements of people playing."
Just like that, huh?
I mean, on the surface, it doesn't seem like much info. Like, of course, your next handheld is gonna have better graphics, and yeah, it was probably a given it was gonna have motion detection in it, but come on, this is Nintendo. They don't even like revealing if their employees go to the bathroom. Iwata just let out 2 facts about their next handheld, and that there is, in fact, going to be a next handheld. Nintendo then barged in and said, "You don't know that." This interview was later clarified to be a misinterpretation of Nintendo's future plans by a spokesperson for the company. See, that's the Nintendo I know. Claiming what somebody said was false to then later be the liars themselves. Like, of course they're making a successor to the DS, of course it's gonna have better graphics, of course it's gonna have motion sensors in it, why bother hiding it after Iwata said it? Iwata himself made further statements on the interview, asking if better graphics and motion sensing would be enough to sell a DS successor. You can't just have better graphics and more controls, you need something else.
Sex appeal!
Late 2009 to early 2010, speculation started to ramp up for a DS2, with rumors that many were receiving development kits around this time, specifically the Pokemon Company. Couple that with patents Nintendo was filing and we have ourselves articles, and 2 of them. So Nintendo patented rumble technology that would be transmitted to the DS stylus pen, so if you hit an enemy in a touchscreen based game, you'd receive feedback in the stylus. And on top of that, some new cartridges. Now the stylus rumble never came to be, but the new DS cartridges, well, the 3DS did have differently shaped game cards, but barely. They were designed this way to ensure they fit in a Nintendo 3DS, but don't fit in a Nintendo DS. We never got these overly long cartridges like this patent suggests. However, I believe this could be in relation to DS development cartridges, which were longer than retail ones. As 2010 made its way through the door, rumors persisted about the next DS, one guy deciding to snoop around the Game Developers Conference that year to find as much info as he could. His findings? I'll take anything at this point. Basically, he discovered the system was going to be more powerful than the Nintendo DS.
Shut the f up!
Graphical capabilities were comparable to the GameCube, and while the system would have 2 screens again, they would be bigger, have a better resolution, and the gap between them would be shrunken significantly. I mean, a lot of those did happen with the 3DS, but a shrunken gap between the 2 screens, I don't think so. People were asking developers what they wanted out of a new DS, with one saying cellular and GPS. That's the one thing I wanted to worry about playing Pack Picks, a data plan. But I mean, why would Nintendo announce a DS2? It was early 2010, they were just about to release a brand new DS revision, the TSI XL. I don't get you. On March 23rd, 2010, Nintendo officially announced a successor to the Nintendo DS. It wasn't called the Nintendo DS2, it was the Nintendo 3DS.
I made this shirt for nothing?
This was done via press release, thus the system wasn't shown. In fact, the name Nintendo 3DS was considered temporary at the time. The big reveal was that it had a screen capable of displaying 3D imagery without the need for glasses, which was actually teased by Iwata during an interview a few months prior. The question related to his stance on 3D gaming. His response was pretty much, "F the glasses." DS games would be fully compatible with the handheld, and the 3DS was supposed to be formally shown later that year at E3 2010. Of course, with the official announcement out of the way, we got a treasure trove of Photoshop. Anybody with a finger, a mouse, and an open weekend whipped up what they thought the 3DS would be. Notice how I didn't say anybody with a brain. I kid, a lot of the system mock-ups are pretty well done and crazy impressive, especially for 2010, but that doesn't mean they're above getting critiqued.
Hello everybody and welcome to Critique That Leak, the show for people looking for meaning in their life. You just have to look really hard. We here at Critique That Leak take our leak critiquer titles very seriously. It's not every day somebody goes to the effort of opening up Photoshop, so we really have to embrace each and every leak we can. There's times we erase one word from a Zelda logo. During 2017 to 2018, there were some rumors floating around about a Link's Awakening remake heading to the Nintendo 3DS. Now, that ended up being for the Nintendo Switch, and while I do believe that remake probably started life on the 3DS, this isn't it. This guy decided to be clever and lazy. See, the title The Legend of Zelda Awakening follows the format of another Game Boy remake on 3DS, Metroid Samus Returns. I take the original title and shake the words up a bit for the remake. The problem is, Nintendo wouldn't use the original Zelda logo from the 90s with no real alterations for a new release of theirs, even if it is for a remake. However, I will put this leak up on the wall to remind me no matter how lazy I am, I could be lazier.
Nintendo obviously announced the 3DS early to get ahead of leaks. When you buy millions of tiny 3D screens from a company to put into your handheld, that's probably gonna get out there. And Nintendo does like to control their own destiny. They don't like people announcing stuff for them. So they announced their new handheld in their own special way. This, of course, raised many questions. Rumors spread like wildfire. Developers were saying all these things about the system. EA said it was cool. Around this time, somebody asked Nintendo customer support about Golden Sun Dark Dawn for the DS, and they responded with, "We can't say anything, but definitely keep an eye on the 3DS at E3 this year." Did that mean Golden Sun Dark Dawn was coming to the 3DS?
I've seen dead people go farther than that story ever did.
Nintendo's trademarks for the system started to become public. Terms like Nintendo 3DSware, now WiiWare and DSiWare were terms used for downloadable only games on those respective systems. Will the 3DS have similar terminology? Will the 3DS be in widescreen? Will Animal Crossing be a launch title? Will the 3DS be cool? A blogger who supposedly had their hands on a development kit for the system posted this mock-up, which was literally just a DS with a bigger screen.
Checks out.
To be fair, the info shared alongside the mock-up ended up being fairly accurate, although they were unsure if it would have an analog stick. The big rumor going into E3 2010 was the report that Nvidia was supplying Nintendo with the Tegra Chip to use in the 3DS. Now, Nvidia and Nintendo are totally swap and spit right now as they supply the chipset for the Nintendo Switch. But talks started with the 3DS. There were definite discussions to have the company power the handheld, but plans fell through. Rumors of a Nvidia Nintendo system emerged around 2009, but were put to bed in June of 2010. Developers were asked about the system, with many saying, "Oh yeah, this thing is more powerful than a Wii. Hell, we can make stuff on par with Xbox 360 games."
This thing can barely play Luigi's Mansion.
Nintendo's E3 2010 press conference finally brought us our first look at the Nintendo 3DS. It was fundamentally a DS inspired by a layer cake. A widescreen display, circle pad, gyroscope, glasses-free 3D, motion sensor, 3D cameras, glasses-free 3D, street pass, glasses-free 3D. Nintendo really fucking hated those glasses. What a press conference. Everybody was jazzed about the 3DS. Attendees were pumped about how the 3D actually worked. And Kid Icarus Uprising being unveiled alongside the system after so many people clamored for the series' return? With Animal Crossing, Mario Kart, Paper Mario, Nintendogs, Ocarina of Time 3D, Professor Layton, Star Fox 64, Steel Diver, fucking Steel Diver! And numerous classic games being demonstrated on it, this was going to be an amazing handheld. The 3DS's design was near final at the show with some slight tweaks. For example, the circle pad was color-coded to the system, and it wasn't actually called the circle pad. Say hello to slide. But of course, with so much excitement came misinformation around this time. Rumors of achievements and voice chat being implemented alongside the ability to copy games to the system's memory spread around. Leaks of a release date in November 2010, or just many dates in general. I swear literally there was a rumor of it releasing releasing in every month of 2010. Some Nintendo developers hinted to Wario making an appearance on the 3DS. I hope they winked after saying that. Nintendo's European website stated Paper Mario for 3DS was releasing on March 25th, 2011. Give or take a year and a half, they weren't that far off. But in actuality, while that was the incorrect date for Paper Mario, that ended up being the exact day the Nintendo 3DS launched in Europe. This era of the 3DS was filled with developer interviews basically saying, man, could you imagine this game on the 3DS? Like Devil's Third. Keep telling yourself that. Nintendo interviews were actually very telling in this age. Hideki Kono pretty much said, yeah, I can see a Luigi's Mansion sequel on 3DS. Less than a year later, how did he get away with that? Miyamoto teased that Super Mario World would make a return on the 3DS. I have no clue what he meant by that. Like the original game? A remake? A return to that world? A 3D version of Mario World? Because some of those sorta happened, but I have no idea what he was talking about based on this interview. The trademarks Nintendo filed came to light, revealing the names Cross-Pass and titles with 3D in them. These definitely became a lot of the built-in software on 3DS, like Street Pass and the AR games. Specs were rumored alongside backlit buttons, no. So this footage of the cancelled game My Garden had this lower quality CGI model of the 3DS, and because of that, the buttons looked illuminated. I find absolutely no reason to backlight 4 small buttons on anything with 3D or S in the title. The latter half of 2010 was filled with a lot of stuff like this. Speculation on this thing we already knew quite a bit about. It was just a matter of waiting for it to actually release at this point. Lots of rumors of the system's release date or release window floated around constantly. However, one of the last news stories of the year was the rumor that the Monster Hunter series was jumping platforms. It was primarily a PlayStation franchise at this point and did tremendously well over there. But with the 3DS looming over, Capcom CEO hinted that with the release of the new system, especially after Monster Hunter Tri was a Wii exclusive, the series may find a new home. Of course, that happened. Now all we had to do in 2011 was wait for the system to get into somebody's hand. That was quick. So these logos made the rounds in early 2012 and were supposedly a set of Zelda titles, one called the Ice Prophecy and one called the Fire Prophecy. Obviously being a dual release puts these in line with Oracle of Seasons and Ages from the Game Boy Color. I gotta be honest, at first glance, there's not a ton to pick apart with these ones. They're fairly well done. However, somebody who spoke Japanese came forward and stated that the kanji used in the titles were nonsensical. The leaker obviously used Google Translate or something to create the Japanese text. As somebody who doesn't speak Japanese, I gotta say, what a fucking idiot. Somebody swiped a 3DS off the production line and yup, they sure had a camera with them. Now before the system released, Nintendo showcased the prototype of it and I'm sorry I ever doubted you. Pikmin for 3DS was listed by some random retailer, and while Pikmin for 3DS was announced 5.5 years later, I don't think they had that much foresight. The 3DS ended up launching to an overwhelming, this is just okay. The launch item wasn't terrible, I mean there was stuff to play, but come on, you can make the argument Camp Soap is stuff. Calling these games stuff is generous. B-tier titles, nothing amazing, especially from Nintendo themselves. Like, holy shit, Pilot Wings, Nintendogs, and Steel Diver? Did they really expect anybody to unironically go, holy shit, Pilot Wings, Nintendogs, and Steel Diver? But people knew the goods were coming eventually. Ocarina of Time 3D, Star Fox 64 3D, a Mario 3D platformer, Mario Kart, things were looking up. People were excited for the future of the system, and because of that, let's talk one of the biggest rumors in the early days of the 3DS, the Nintendo 3DS Lite. A redesigned and refined version of the handheld in a similar fashion to the Nintendo DS Lite. Basically, people were waiting for the 3DS to get out of those growing pains and have a way better model. Everybody was saying, yeah, that's great, where's your hotter sun? Better battery life, better screens, better 3D effect, better design, a second circle pad, just a few things people were wanting. A new 3DS with a second circle pad was always talked about, and that was primarily because around this time was when Sony announced the successor to the PSP, the Next Generation Portable, NGP, featuring not one, but 2 reasons to not buy a 3DS. People just automatically jumped to the fact that the 3DS needed a second stick just because the NGP had one, and due to all this, Nintendo had to respond to the press about a new 3DS model before the first model even came out. But they may have had to ask that because of the late launch of the system. I mean, what else was the press going to ask Nintendo? Bust-a-move universes on the 3DS, how does that make you feel? Games and news were sparse leading up to E3 2011 that summer. I mean, Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games for the 3DS was leaked via a Czech press release. Please say holy shit. Please say holy shit. Most leaks and rumors had to do with retailers accidentally listing games before they were to be officially announced. Rayman Origins and Sonic Generations had the hardest time staying a surprise, kept getting listed multiple times before their announcements, especially Sonic Generations for 3DS. Sega themselves accidentally included it on an earnings report, quickly said, oh god, removed it, announced it like a month later. Now one of the big games we were looking forward to seeing more on was the 3D Mario game for 3DS announced at the Game Developers Conference of 2011, and right before E3, this screenshot circulated around, and it was just a Photoshop of another game, but hey, at least it was news about the 3DS. E3 2011 happened, and the 3DS definitely had a fair amount of coverage. We got trailers for Super Mario 3D, Mario Kart 3D, Kid Icarus Uprising, and Luigi's Mansion 2 was fully unveiled, but that didn't prepare us for Battlefield 3 on the 3DS being listed by EA Portugal. However, E3 2011 was definitely focused on Nintendo's new home console announcement, the Wii U. It was announced, and that's all I can say about the legacy of this system. During that summer, the 3DS was hurting hard. Sure, Ocarina of Time 3D came out, but it didn't do enough to turn around the slow sales for the system, so Nintendo had to make the difficult decision to cut the price from $250 to $170. To make the price cut sting that much less for those who bought a 3DS near launch, Nintendo announced that 20 NES and Game Boy Advance games would be given to them for free, with some titles being announced right there on the spot and others being announced at a later date. And Nintendo kept accidentally saying Mario 3 was going to be one of them, and it wasn't. But easily, the biggest rumor in the summer of 2011 was that Nintendo had something up their sleeves. They heard people were complaining that the 3DS only had one circle pad, and a rumor popped up that they would be releasing an attachment for the handheld that upped that one to 2. This rumor was accompanied by one that stated Nintendo was going to release a new 3DS model in 2012 that would de-emphasize the 3D alongside a new design and name. Now, there was a new 3DS model in 2012, the Nintendo 3DS XL. It was none of this. I mean, it was a new design, there were different elements to it, but when you get down to it, the 3DS XL was basically just a bigger 3DS, so not a radically new look or anything. This rumor, however, perfectly describes the 3DS model Nintendo released in 2013, the Nintendo 2DS. No 3D screen, completely new design, different name. They got the release year wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is what they were talking about. But back to the second circle pad, more reports popped up pertaining to it, including many claiming it would be revealed in the Japanese magazine Famitsu alongside Monster Hunter Tri-G. A description of the device leaked out, and when the Famitsu article came, what the hell is that? Finally, a soap dish for my 3DS. This thing was a behemoth, but it was a necessary behemoth. This was made specifically to combat criticism of the 3DS compared to the upcoming NGP by Sony, finally renamed to PlayStation Vita, and to also lure in more traditional games, more stuff like Metal Gear and Resident Evil. I believe this thing was made just to shut people up about the 3DS needing a second stick, because when it came out, that's all you can really say about it. It came out, it was barely supported, and nobody bought it. And one sec, I know some people bought it, you don't have to tell me. Scott, I bought the Circle Pad Pro, I go to bed with it every night. A rumor floated around that Xenoblade developer Monolith Soft was working on a 3DS title, and it was a threequel, the third title in a beloved series. This obviously pointed to a third Baten Kaidos game, as that was one of the only Monolith Soft series that could have gotten a third game, but nothing happened. Monolith Soft did develop the Project Cross Zone games for the 3DS, and Xenoblade was brought over to the new 3DS in 2015, but other than that, they didn't do all too much on this system. As fall came around, Super Mario 3DS and Mario Kart 3DS were both given names, and they could have been worse. And when full-blown artwork of Mario 3D Land was revealed, many with keen eyes discovered Tanuki Luigi was in the game! Fans discovered what Nintendo was too scared to reveal. Following the Nintendo 3DS Lite, we have one of the other big rumors that persisted constantly, the Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. After Ocarina of Time 3D, a remake of that game's sequel seemed like a no-brainer. Pretty much every interview with Zelda producer Eiji Aonuma contained a question about a Majora's Mask remake on 3DS. Fan campaigns and consistent teasing occurred for years. Nintendo knew how much people wanted this and would put Easter eggs into games or bring it up during interviews, but it was always eclipsed by the rumor that Sonic Generations 3DS may get delayed to 2012. It didn't, but still. During the Majora's Mask 3D hysteria from 2011 to 2014, various rumors came out about the game's existence, retailer listings, hints from Nintendo. It was a game that just had to come out at some point, and I specifically remember retailer listings would use fan box art sometimes, and I will take this as an opportunity to say this box art was really good, but I like the fan box art that was more in line with Ocarina 3D. I am a big supporter of that. But here we have some fan art that some people took as a real Majora's Mask 3DS XL, purple and all. The perfect color for a Majora's Mask themed system. And what Majora's Mask system did we get? I'm glad I'm colorblind. While talking Majora's Mask, Aonuma confirmed a new Zelda game for 3DS was being worked on, and later on in another interview stated that there were talks about a 3D Link to the Past remake. They would not let up about Link to the Past on 3DS, with talks of a remake and even potentially a sequel. Looking back, it's obvious why they wouldn't shut up about it, because they were making it. Honestly, even when Nintendo's pretty blunt about this kind of stuff, they still surprise me. Nearing the end of 2011, it was reported that the 7th game in a popular JRPG franchise would get an enhanced remake for the 3DS. Now, many assume assumed it would either be Dragon Quest VII or Final Fantasy VII, and between those two, it turned out to be Dragon Quest, which was announced a year later. And at the start of 2012, we're going in hot with something that hasn't been rumored yet, the Nintendo 3DS Lite. You. Thinner and better battery life than the current model. I always felt that 2012 was a very ho-hum year for the 3DS, and it starting with another rumor about the 3DS Lite solidifies that. Now, one thing that did leak that got people talking was the box art for Theatrhythm Final Fantasy. In the top left corner, there was a logo for something called Nintendo Network. As more box art started popping up with this logo, many wondered, what is this? I assumed it was new branding for the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection. Nintendo would pop this logo in the corners of games that supported internet connectivity, and I wasn't wrong, Nintendo Network was pretty much that. I always liked the logo and name for this. It's a shame it only appeared during this generation. Like I said, 2012 was kind of a whatever year for the 3DS. It was obvious Nintendo was really prepping for the Wii U's launch, so 3DS took a bit of a backseat. Why do I say this? We got press releases like this. Nintendo hired a spokesdog. Soul Calibur 5 was listed for the 3DS, sure. Oh, my favorite one was when EB Games had box art for Donkey Kong 3D up. They then said it was a mistake and promptly destroyed their entire stock of fake box art. I mean, a year after this rumor, Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D was announced, and the art used on this box was from Donkey Kong Country Returns. Probably doesn't mean anything, but they might have been onto something. It was reported that Nintendo was attempting to fund third-party franchise revivals on the 3DS, with one of the series being the infamous Seaman. 3 years later, in 2015, a Seaman 3DS game was confirmed to be in development at some point, but it ended up being cancelled. That is unfortunate, because as Seaman-y as Seaman is, I feel like the 3DS would have been the perfect platform for it. But since that was confirmed to be in development, that means Nintendo was seeking other franchises to be revived on the system, which is pretty interesting. I know they said third party, but the developer of Seaman made Odama on the GameCube, which was published by Nintendo. Why didn't we get Odama 3D? A few months before E3 2012, other 3DS titles were being rumored, such as a companion title to Epic Mickey 2 on the system, this one being 2D entitled Power of Illusion, a follow-up to Castle of Illusion on the Sega Genesis. That was completely true. Nintendo of America went on a rampage registering website domain names, and one happened to slip through. FireEmblemAwakening.com. Fire Emblem on 3DS was just about to release in Japan at this time, but no word of it coming over to North America or Europe just yet. While it wasn't official for a couple more months, this was pretty blatant confirmation. And not only did their domain registrations leak, but some patents came out too. If Nintendo killed a man, it would probably leak through a patent. This one showcases a new circle pad design akin to the style of the GameCube controller stick, and this one focuses on AR technology where, for example, the game tells you, find me something blue, anxiety attack follows, find something blue, bam, you win. Now if this became anything, I'd say it was Chibi Robo Photo Finder. That game asks you to find real life objects to take pictures of to transport into the game, which is kind of the vibe I'm getting from this patent. This one shows off using the stylus to control a game without touching the top screen, so I assume this would have been a way to implement a touchscreen sort of deal to the 3D screen of the 3DS with a vibrating stylus. And no matter how useless and wasteful of money you think this idea is, why don't you try to do what the 3DS is doing? I bet you can't. Castlevania Mirror of Faith for the 3DS was rumored for E3 2012. Almost nailed it. But here we have the big one, the rumor to end all rumors, the Nintendo 3DS XL. Nikkei reported that Nintendo was set to reveal a 3DS with a bigger screen similar to the Nintendo DSi XL at E3 2012. This was accompanied by Wii U pricing info, and Nintendo said these rumors were false.
This is Nintendo 3DS XL.
What the hell happened there? If we actually look at Nintendo's response to these rumors, they said some things are incorrect. Alright, so the 3DS XL isn't something. Now going back to Fire Emblem Awakening's domain registration, you may ask, when did it officially get revealed for the States? Well, Reggie Fils-Aimé got in front of some journalists at E3 2012 and proudly said,
Fire Emblem Awakening's coming to Nintendo 3DS. Damn it.
Apparently he wasn't supposed to say that, but he sure did. Alongside Fire Emblem, another game that was rumored to be localized at some point was Tomodachi Life, known in Japan as Tomodachi Collection. This eventually made it over in 2014, but a localization was consistently talked about beforehand. Back then, rumors of its translation started when many assumed the title over here would be Communicator Gamers Collection. Moving on. Alpha Dream, the developers of the Mario and Luigi series, filed a patent in 2012 showcasing how a character on the bottom screen of the 3DS would be manipulated to then help a character on the top screen progress through a level. This is literally Mario and Luigi Dream Team a year before it was announced. With the 3DS XL's introduction, many retailers started to promote the product, with one getting a little too excited. That's not right. Look, a second circle pad. I'm telling you, people would have killed for a second circle pad. Look at all the 3DS games I could use a second circle pad with. Tetris Access, Tetris Ultimate, I need this.
Could you imagine if you had access to a top secret Nintendo game and all you had on you was a flipbook for a camera and decided to only film the title screen? It's a fucking handheld system. If you can't film it there, pick it up and bring it to the bathroom.
Now, the rest of 2012 was pretty light in terms of rumors and speculation, but when 2013 came along, that's when things started to heat up. The best year in 3DS history. Every single month, there was a new experience from Nintendo themselves. It was bliss. And it all started out with the announcement of a Pokemon Nintendo Direct in January. Now, keep in mind, a Pokemon 3DS title had been long awaited for at this point. They kept making games for the DS when the 3DS was a thing, but before the livestream happened, many saw the keywords 3DS in the description, implying that this wasn't going to be Pokemon 2 for the Nintendo DS, this was going to be a big boy game. Monster Hunter 4 was a 3DS exclusive, but after it got a delay, rumors persisted of it all being so a PlayStation Vita version could release alongside it.
Never.
It's actually surprising to me that Monster Hunter never made it to the Vita, but the website that reported that can always dream. Many 3DS rumors at this point had to do with trademark filings leaking out or retailer listings just having the time of their lives. New Super Luigi for the 3DS?
Why not?
Angry Birds Star Wars?
It sure did.
Lego Friends?
Lego?
Of course, there was the coveted special edition systems that always seemed to be announced via ads or through store inventory systems before Nintendo could even think about making them. Pokemon X and Y systems were reported via Target's inventory, Zelda: A Link Between Worlds and Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon bundles were shown off in weekly ads, this Mario and Luigi Dream Team 3DS XL floated around a bit before releasing, and by God, I remember they could not sell this for the life of them. For a special edition system, this sure went on sale a lot. This Luigi 2DS turned out to be a fake made by a fan, would you look at that? I mean, this stuff was the most exciting 3DS speculation at the time. What, Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games is coming to the 3DS? Oh, never mind, f it, make a Luigi 2DS. Now, a pretty common way for games to get leaked is through the rating system. When a game gets rated, well, be prepared for anarchy. Steel Diver Sub Wars was ousted through these means alongside NES Remix for the Wii U. The sequel to Steel Diver was leaked through the Australian classification website. Now, I don't usually get pissed about things leaking. This was an exception. Something consistently rumored with the 3DS was legacy content from other systems being available on the Nintendo eShop. We got NES, Game Boy Color, and Game Gear at this point, but strangely, Reggie did say years prior that TurboGrafx 16 games would be available. I'm still waiting. And while Game Boy Advance was available to early adopters of the 3DS as a Please God Forgive Us package, they were never available to the general public. That didn't stop speculation. Pretty much everybody predicted GBA games would be available on the 3DS. In fact, a lot of things led many to believe that. Various GBA titles appeared on Nintendo of Europe's website implying they were coming. But there were also SNES titles rumored for the 3DS. On Miiverse, the social media network for 3DS and Wii U, most games had communities you could harass, and one of them was the Virtual Console release for Contra 3 The Alien Wars on Wii U. Accessing this community on the 3DS would show the game running on a 3DS XL. What does that mean? Well, Miiverse communities for Virtual Console games on the Wii U and 3DS always had this template going on in their banner. It was either the 3DS or Wii U displaying a screenshot of the game. So if I had to guess, I'd say this was an automatic template created, gone wrong. But everything we've talked about has led to this. See, when Yoshi's New Island was coming out, a certain listing popped up online detailing a special edition Yoshi 3DS XL. This spread like wildfire and showed off an image of the system, and he said it was hideous.
It was also made by a 16-year-old Scot.
Yeah, I got bored one day in July of 2013 and decided to make a mock-up for a special edition 3DS box. The core idea here was to just make a box for the system. I wanted to try and mimic the design of something like the Animal Crossing 3DS box. The 3DS design itself was an afterthought. I effectively gave a 3DS liver spots. And then IGN reported on this thing, and so did a lot of other sites. I felt really proud about that one. The reason my fan art was used was because a Yoshi 3DS was actually coming out, and one of these retailers just decided to Google Yoshi 3DS and uploaded the worst looking one they could find. To commemorate the experience, I recently bought the actual 3DS this listing was for. Weren't enough green spots on this one, but it's still okay.
Back in 2017, Nintendo announced a multiplayer Kirby game was in the works for the 3DS, and right before E3, this year's screenshot leaked, and it is one of the better ones I've seen. The overall style of the logo looks really professional and honestly, better than some other Kirby games. Now, what are Star Knights? I don't know. It seems like they popped this into a Kirby title generator. It's on a screen! You ever see a game not on a screen? This one must be true! I don't have much to say about this one other than nothing screams a fantasy adventure game more than a big fat G on the shield.
Yeah, the vast majority of rumors in the latter half of the 3DS's life really had to do with new system colors and variations. I'd argue that's because while more people had a 3DS than a Wii U, the Wii U and home console rumors in general were always more exciting. That's actually something I noticed with Nintendo in general. They always hold their home console stuff in higher regards. You always see them nostalgically reminiscing about their home consoles. Their handhelds don't get nearly as much love. Case in point, what was the big 3DS talk at the time? Oh, there's a Sea Green 2DS coming? A Smash Bros. 3DS was leaked in flyers. I mean, that was pretty interesting. It was better than the rumor about Codename Steam getting a demo via free trading cards, woo. Right before E3 2015, a trailer for the 3DS version of Hyrule Warriors was accidentally uploaded early to Tecmo Koei's YouTube channel, and during that summer it was uncovered that Mercury Steam, the developers behind Castlevania Mirror of Faith, pitched a Metroid 3DS title to Nintendo. It happened. In March of 2016, a random retailer advertised new budget Nintendo Selects re-releases for Wii, Wii U, and 3DS early. Look at this advertisement. Why did this turn out to be true? I was excited about this though. See, Pikmin 3 was really expensive at the time, so a re-release for 20 bones, please and thank you. With the 20th anniversary of Pokemon on the horizon, many were speculating the release of a new generation for the series, mainly because Nintendo's domain names for Pokemon Sun and Moon were leaked alongside the logos, whoops. Pretty much all the Pokemon titles for the 3DS experienced just a ton of leaks. New Pokemon, new forms, just everything you can think of gets leaked when a new Pokemon's on the way. Sun and Moon were pretty much the big thing for that year, and 2016 was some year, and by some, I mean terrible. Just nothing was happening. Nintendo stated that this was the year they would announce new details on their next home console, the NX, and because of that, man, nothing happened. It was just constantly waiting around for the thing to get announced. But this meant 2016 was the year of speculation. I specifically recall this rumored lineup for Nintendo's year, detailing fun facts about the NX launch, marketing budgets for 2016 alongside the full 3DS lineup of games for the year. So a lot of titles are just code names here, but they state what caliber of games they were. I can make some assumptions as to what these various codenames ended up becoming, but I can't say for sure. The European Nintendo Direct for March 2016 was leaked a day before it aired, and apparently, this is how Nintendo Directs are organized. The two big things outed here were Super Nintendo games for the new Nintendo 3DS and Monster Hunter Generations. Yes, Super Nintendo games on the new Nintendo 3DS. The updated models only, not the original ones accepted. Near the end of 2016, Nintendo finally unveiled the Nintendo NX, officially called the Nintendo Switch. With it being a home console handheld hybrid, many brought into question the 3DS's future. Will Nintendo continue to support the 3DS or immediately move on to the Switch? Turns out, this thing wouldn't die! Reports discuss the 3DS not being thrown to the side with the inception of the Switch. In fact, Nintendo was thinking of a successor to the handheld. Here's the thing, obviously, a 3DS successor was worked on by Nintendo. If they released 1-2 Switch, they worked on a successor to the 3DS. There's no way they weren't thinking of something internally. Now, the successor definitely ended up being the Nintendo Switch Lite, a handheld-only variant of the Nintendo Switch. But was that what these rumors were referring to? My shoulders are gonna work overtime on this one. Miyamoto then said during an interview that a GPS was considered for the 3DS.
I knew something was missing from Pack Picks!
2017 was an interesting year for the system. As the Nintendo Switch was exploding onto the scene, the 3DS was cruising along with a ton of support. They were primarily smaller projects like remakes, but still, 2017 had some of the most 3DS support in a long while. And one of the projects that made it onto the system was leaked via the eShop. Data for a game called Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga DX, supposedly a remake of the original RPG on the Game Boy Advance, was spotted on Nintendo servers. Later on, an icon and full name were discovered: Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga plus Bowser's Minions. I prefer DX. This game was later fully revealed at E3 2017, and speaking of E3, right around this time, the Pokemon Company announced their slate of projects for the year, being Pokken Tournament DX for the Nintendo Switch and Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon for the 3DS. But leading up to this, lots of talk was surrounding a third version of Pokemon Sun and Moon for the Nintendo Switch, being Pokemon Stars. After the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon announcements, the press site for the games listed them as Nintendo Switch titles in addition to 3DS, which ended up being a silly fucking mistake. Before the new 3DS XL was announced for North America, this banner came into GameStop and leaked online. I wonder what it could mean. In April of 2014, Nintendo trademarked the title Codename Steam, Strike Team eliminating the Alien Menace. Nobody knew what it meant, but it wasn't until E3 2014 that Nintendo hosted a dedicated conference to announce Codename Steam for the 3DS, and
Fun fact, did you know Codename Steam released?
Later that summer, Mega Man Legacy Collection 2 was announced in 2017. No 3DS version in sight, which considering the first one made it onto the platform, it wasn't completely improbable to expect a 3DS version of 2 running. Digging through the code though, many uncovered the inclusion of references to the 3DS, implying a 3DS version was planned at some point. Then 2018 happened, and Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn was rumored to be a new 3DS exclusive. Take that, Nintendo! Nintendo's site labeled it as only for new Nintendo 3DS, but look at me playing it on a 2DS and feeling miserable. And that's how the 3DS ended things, with a bit of misery. The last few games Nintendo released for the platform bombed, and because of that, a rumor circulated that Nintendo canceled plans for other games to release on the system, like a new Fire Emblem remake. It's unfortunate, but let's be honest. Most have moved on to the Nintendo Switch, and I'd rather see Nintendo's resources for game development go towards a system that more are playing. As cool as some of the later releases in the 3DS's life were, they didn't do as well as they could have if they released on a system that more people were excited about and playing more consistently at the time.
You know what? After going through all that, I think I might have changed my mind on rumors. They can be pretty fun. From this day forward, I will only believe rumors, and if those rumors ever become facts,